I'm on a mission to combine every single video game genre with a factory game. That's right, not even text-based games and racing games will be safe. However, my first victim will be the management game, since I've got to start somewhere and I really want to combine Factorio with mini motorways. Okay, but I can almost hear you think it. But most factory games are already management games. True, but this is not the kind of management game you're used to. What? See, I wanted to try something different. What if I took a game like Factorio or Shapes and combine it with a relaxing management game that gets harder with time but never gets quite stressful? Well, that would be Monster Shopper. In Monster Shopper, you are managing the production of monsters for customers. Customers will tell you what kind of monster they want and in what color, and it's up to you to make that happen. You'll be spawning in body parts, combining them and coloring them before eventually shipping them off to their delivery points. But I have not actually made any of that yet. I started off by making a new project. I called it Mob Factory because that's what I originally wanted to name it, but it turns out another awesome developer was too quick for me, so I changed it to Monster Shopper later. I would come beat you up if your game didn't look so darn cool. Customers want randomly generated monsters in a randomly chosen color, so I figured I'd start with that. I'm not an artist and I wasn't quite sure yet what I wanted this game to look like, apart from simple and easy on the eyes. So I made use of this really cool tool by Kenny, the Creature Mixer, and picked some designs that I thought would be easy enough to tell apart in my game. Then with some Aseprite surgery, I separated all the body parts into different layers and exported them all to Unity. Then some simple code to tell the delivery point to assemble a random character it wants you to make, and voila, an abomination. No, really, what the heck is that? Honestly, that was the most important part of the prototype for me at first, because I wasn't quite sure if I'd be able to get it to work with the sprites and combining different designs. But now that I knew that it would work, it was time for the fun stuff. Automation. Oh man, I love this so much. Yeah, I should start with the conveyor belts. Yep, this here is the face of someone who's in love with his own game. Let me tell you how it works. So I made a simple sprite to show the belt's direction and gave it 2 colliders. One to see what the next belt would be that the monster could go to, and one so other belts could actually find this belt. I then made a monster prefab that's going to be transported on those belts. I say monster prefab, but I actually mean prefab of body parts that when combined could possibly be considered a monster. Doesn't have quite the same ring to it though, does it? That prefab is what makes this whole thing work. It checks what belt it is currently on and then asks that belt very politely what the next belt is to go to and then moves towards that belt. There is something so soothing about watching this do its thing. It's kinda like those automatic marble tracks from your childhood. No? Just me? But I feel like I'm missing something rather important in this factory game. The factory. Combining objects to make another is essential in factory games, and that's exactly what I'm doing next. Bruh. So I made another simple square and added some squares around it to show to myself where the inputs would be and where the output would be. Green being the input and red being the output. Then, quite simply, I had the monster prefab on conveyor belts check what kind of object they're going to next. If it's the combiner object, it will check what body parts are inside the combiner and compares them to its own body parts. But if the combiner has filled up all the slots already, it will just refuse the monster. Otherwise, it will see if the monster fits into the combiner. With that in place, we now have a conveyor belt, an object that spawns body parts, an object that combines body parts, and a delivery point. Now all we need is an object that colors the body parts. And there you go, it's an actual factory game now. It's possible to go from beginning to end. Automation is so beautiful. But management games are known for getting more difficult the longer you play. And that was my goal after all. Properly combining the two genres. So for this game that means adding more delivery points to slowly stress you out. With the world slowly expanding, it's up to you to keep up with demand. Place down more spawners, belts, combiners and dyers, and try not to make too much of a mess with your spaghetti. I'd like you all to know that the prototype had proved itself at this point, and that I should have probably focused on other sides of the project, but I'm weak. So I may have made 2 more objects for transporting monsters. The splitter and the underground belts.
Oh boy.
Now, I know the game currently looks much different from what you're seeing right now, but I will talk about that in a future video. I just really want to spend the rest of this one focusing on more factory shenanigans. Nerd! Alright, let's see if I can properly explain how the splitter works. So we have a spawner here, which will spawn a body part, like the actual body segment of it. We have a conveyor belt, which looks different, I know. We have 2 more conveyor belts over here that each go their own way. And then we have the splitter, which very clearly, no, that doesn't, no, also not that, also, there you go.
Whoa, first try!
And there it should work, there you go. Okay, it's not great because of the preview not working, but let me just explain to you how it works in a later version of this game. Well, that's a crazy big difference. So this is the current version, just take it with a grain of salt or something. Basically, a splitter is 2 tiles, which is a problem because the entire map works with a grid-based system that just looks at a position. Is something in this position? If yes, then you cannot place anything there. A splitter has 2 tiles, so I had to rewrite that entire thing, which was dramatic and hurt my feelings. Instead of checking if a certain position is taken, I just basically now have a list of objects, and every object has a list of positions rather than just one. So for objects like conveyor belts or spawners or combiners or diners, whatever, that's just 1 position, which is not a problem. And for a splitter, that is 2 positions, which is also very important for stuff like rotating. I cannot rotate the splitter, but if I were to place it here and rotate it now, it does work. The game is apparently also broken. There's nothing here. Why aren't you rotating? Okay, good to know that the game is broken. Oh, and obviously to explain what the splitter actually does, it's pretty simple. It has 1 input and 2 outputs, and it just splits the input over the 2 outputs, switching between one and the other every single time. But now, to talk about the final object for transportation, the underground belt. The game is 2D, so there is no depth, meaning that things can get messy real quick. While I guess you could say that that is part of the puzzle element of the game, I would say no! My brain is small, and I don't want to have to deal with this. So instead, I wanted to make an object that I often see in similar games. A conveyor belt that goes underground so you can make them cross without having to sacrifice one over the other. Making this wasn't too hard is something I would say if I wasn't about as smart as a tree. Basically, underground conveyor belts come in 2 parts, the start and the end. I just made sure that if you place one, it would set that as the start belt, and the next one would be the end belt, which automatically connected the 2 of them in code. But you could only place the end belt in a way that the rotation is the same as with the start belt, and it's also within a certain distance of each other. When you place the 2 underground belts, something special happens. I spawn in regular conveyor belts between them, but I tell them that they are placed under the ground. This just means that they are invisible to the naked eye and that they cannot interfere with regular conveyor belts. Getting all these mechanics and systems to work together properly was a bit of a challenge, but because I really didn't want this game to exist without them, I did not give up, and I eventually had this. And there you go, Monster Shopper's prototype. I love this so much! Oh. There's still so much that has changed since then, and honestly, I realized that I had probably made the biggest game design flaw that I have ever made developing games. But that will be the topic for the next devlog. So be sure to subscribe to the channel to see when that goes up. Bye!